Hello, I'm Anthony Rooley. I'm a Monteverdi madrigal enthusiast. I'm also the director of the Consort of Music that you've just heard singing that madrigal, Quelle Argeline. For years, I've been looking for an opportunity to perform these madrigals in the place for which they were composed. That's why we're here, in the secret garden of the Palazzo Te in Mantua. Claudio Monteverdi worked here around 1600 for the Duke, Vincenzo Gonzaga. Vincenzo was the heir to one of the most extraordinary of Renaissance Italy's artistic treasure houses. For more than 5 generations, the Gonzagas had patronized architects, painters and musicians and lived their daily political and domestic lives in the midst of the splendors the family had created. Monteverdi, whom we now think of as one of music's most innovative geniuses, was no more than another one of the Duke's artistic servants. The Duke gave him the opportunity to work, and the brilliantly original music he created speaks for itself. But Monteverdi's letters, full of the obsequiousness characteristic of the artist-patron relationship in the 17th century, tell another story. Of wages paid months late, of livery too flimsy to keep the composer warm, having to be supplemented from his wages, of a continuous burden of overwork leading to regular illness and what seems a genuine fear of being worked to death. Earlier generations of the Gonzagas had treated their artists better. Ludovico and Federico had honoured Mantegna when he'd been brought to Mantua as image maker to the Duke, and Federico II, Vincenzo's grandfather, when he brought Giulio Romano from Rome to occupy a similar post, seems to have given him something like carte blanche. When Duke Federico built the Palazzo Te in the 1520s and 30s, the whole concept, both architecture and decoration, were carried out according to Giulio's wishes. The ducal stables, standing on a completely undeveloped island in the west of the city, outside the walls and across the canal, became, in the imaginations of Federico and Giulio, a pleasure dome, a bower of bliss, where the Gonzaga dukes came to enjoy the delights of food and wine, poetry and music, mistresses and courtesans. Many craftsmen and artists were employed to execute the project, but the whole concept, in all its richness and sensuality, was entirely Giulio's. This Gonzaga Palace is filled with visual delights, but what really excites me was the full-time professional ensemble of virtuoso singers that was employed here. I read the book, seen the photographs, but nothing prepared me for the impact of this extraordinary room. It's completely dominated by the truly gigantic figure of Polyphemus, painted in a highly dramatic, almost comic book style. Not naturalistic, certainly. More an overpowering fantasy. I see him as Federico Gonzaga himself, with his one beady eye looking down on everything and everybody that he owns. In this room, the court celebrated the banquet of the censors to inflame the imagination and ardour of the Duke. Monteverdi's music makes a picture of lovemaking, which is witty, tender, delicate, and shared. Here's the first stirrings of opera, condensed into 2.5 minutes. This, or something like it, I believe to be very close to the manner of presentation that Monteverdi employed to amuse his patron in this very room, built for the sensual delights and pleasures. The frescoes are full of music and musicians, and a contemporary account describes performances given in a room very like this one, in a detail which is the foundation and inspiration of our own work. The dukes took the greatest delight in the art, especially in having many noble ladies and gentlemen learn to sing and play superbly, so that they spent entire days in the room, designed especially for this purpose and beautifully decorated with paintings. They accompanied the music and the sentiment with appropriate facial expressions, glances and gestures, with no awkward movements of the mouth or hands or body which might not express the feeling of the song. That the use of this kind of gesture and expressiveness led to a kind of dramatization seems clear, and it's characteristic of the period that this drama should be expressed in the language and action of the pastoral convention, that Arcadian society of shepherds and shepherdesses, derived from the classical Greek poet Theocritus.